Welcome to the Everyday Epigenetics Raw, Real, Relatable podcast. We're your hosts, Susan Robbins, certified epigenetic human performance coach,
and Kate King, licensed psychotherapist, board-certified art therapist, and award-winning author. Together, we bring two perspectives, two styles, and one shared passion for epigenetics.
On this podcast, we delve into topics such as environment, nutrition, fitness, mindset, social dynamics, and trauma as they pertain to epigenetic expression in a way that's relatable to everyone.
We recognize that everyone's needs are unique. There are no one-size-fits-all solutions for your mind, body, and heart. The true magic lies within you.
So if you're ready to create a radiant life through epigenetics and reclaim your authentic self, then buckle up. Here we go. Welcome to the Everyday Epigenetics Raw, Real, Relatable podcast. We are your hosts. I am certified epigenetic human performance coach Susan Robbins, and I'm here with my lovely co-host,
Kate King, licensed psychotherapist, board-certified art therapist, and award-winning author.
So this is a place where we talk about everything lifestyle and environment and how it relates to our genetic expression. So today, buckle the heck up for this one. If you have stress in your life, if you have inflammation, which is every single one of you, even if you think you don't have stress, trust me, if you're listening to this and reacting, you're stress. That's stress. We have good stress, we have bad stress. Good stress is called eustress. And then we have distress. And that's what people tend to think mostly about. I'm stressed is the distress. But every day our body is reacting, which is causing us to turn genes on and off. And so much of this is related to the vagus nerve, which regulates our heart rate, blood pressure, breath, and our digestion. And that's what we're here to talk about today. I can't talk today because I'm too stinking excited, but this is my jam here. And we're going to be talking about the vagus nerve and heart rate variability, or HRV. So all of you who have the trackers, I love my Garmin. There's people who use the Oura Ring, and I know our guest today is all about the Oura Ring, and I'm going to introduce him in a second. He's going to blow you away. But the more information we have about what our body is doing, the better choices we can make. We don't want to fear the information. We want to use it to empower us. So our guest today is Dr. Navaz Habib. He is also known as the Vagus Nerve Doc. He's a best-selling author and host of the Health Upgrade podcast. After using functional medicine to overcome his own health challenges, Dr. Habib, but we go by Dr. Navaz, correct?
Works for me. Whatever you like. I'm comfortable.
He's built Health Upgraded, an online health program guiding parents and professionals to enhance their health by unlocking the healing power of the vagus nerve to reduce the effects of stress and inflammation. So I had listened to Dr. Navaz on a webinar on HRV and the vagus nerve, and I was just blown away and immediately reached out and said, I listened to you on this webinar. Can you please come on our podcast and talk to us about this? And he so graciously immediately accepted. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the show, Dr. Navaz Habib. I'm
honored and excited to be here with you both.
So let's start off. We have so much that we want to cover today. So let's start off first about a little bit about your journey before we start talking about the vagus nerve.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think everybody who gets into holistic health in some capacity has their own story or their own journey that they've gone through, and the answers that they were given through that journey were not good enough, and they seeked out the answers on their own. And my story is really no different from that. I had my own health struggles in my 20s. I was dealing with borderline diabetes, high blood pressure, weight struggles in my early 20s. And this was before I went to chiropractic college. As I went through chiropractic college, and just a couple of years afterwards, where my health was really suffering. I was just not doing well personally. And that was interesting because I'm learning what health is in theory while I'm in chiropractic school, and really trying to hone in on why the body works the way that it does and how to help it work better. And ultimately, I wasn't doing that for myself. And I was trying to share this stuff with my patients, but I wasn't really implementing. And I think that was
Mm.
obviously very frustrating for me. But once I started to learn what this was, it was an interesting and a very chance encounter with my mentor, Sachin Patel, who was also on the webinar with me,
He
funny
was.
enough. And he introduced me to this concept of health and functional medicine, the idea that we need to optimize the function of each cell inside the body, allowing the body to do its job effectively, whether cellular function or epigenetic specific function, which, funny enough, they're all tied together,
Oh, yeah.
but it's enabling the body to do the work that it needs to do effectively with limited hindrances, with limited negative stress, and being able to be resilient and bounce back from all of these challenges. And my journey took me to lose a bunch of weight, get rid of a lot of these health challenges, and not with the intent of weight loss, but rather with the intent of building health. Slightly different framing, but it really helped me underline what I was trying to do and where this issue was. And my journey then took me to understand that inflammation is this important process. It's an absolutely imperative process within our bodies. But this process needs to be controlled. So, in the same way that a car has an accelerator and a brake, the accelerator is necessary for the car to go, but without the brakes, the accelerator becomes a danger. That's exactly the same concept here. Inflammation is like the accelerator, that sympathetic drive. We'll talk about that in a second. But when we push our body too hard for too fast, it becomes dangerous to ourselves and to those around us. And we need control. We need to implement a system of control over that accelerator process. And the brakes do that. And funny enough, in the body, the brakes are the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve really came up as the pathway by which we can initiate that sense of control over that inflammatory pathway. And this really led me to understand the neuroimmune connection, how the brain sends information to all of the organs within the body, specifically to the immune cells that are present in every cell of the body, to help them initiate a shift from that fight mode into a fix M2. We'll get into the science mode. And that is really why the vagus nerve became as big in my mind as it is, because when you have mindful, conscious control, you can actually change your inflammatory pathways. You can change the breakdown and you can really initiate the recovery and the healing process. And it all came down to this underlying concept that our bodies cannot heal when we're stuck in fight or flight sympathetic state. The vagus nerve is the pathway to send those signals out, to control, to initiate that healing pathway. That really was the shift for me. That really helped push me to understand this is the thing that needs to be working, and we need to do as much work as possible, particularly in the world that we live in today, that is hyper stressed, hyper activated, just constantly in go, go, go mode, that we really need to work to slow down and initiate that parasympathetic healing response. That's what brought me into this journey, the pathway that I took in a nutshell. And that's where we are today.
Love it. So let's start talking about the vagus nerve. If you can explain to people what the vagus nerve is, I just touched briefly on what it does, but if you can go into a little bit more detail so they can understand the importance of this system.
The vagus nerve is unique in the body, and we'll get into exactly why. But if you think of nerves, we generally think from the brain. We've got our central nervous system, we've got the brain in our cranium, obviously, extends down into the brain stem, and then that brain stem extends down into the spinal cord. From all of these central nervous system structures, we have nerves that come out and go to various parts of the body. Most, if not all nerves, except for the vagus nerve, go to one place. Okay. So most nerves will go to the skin, to the muscle, to do something motor or sensory related. We also have a sympathetic chain ganglia, which is present just in front of the spinal cord. And that has the opposing mechanism to the vagus nerve. And we have 12 pairs of cranial nerves that come out from the brainstem and do all of the work within the head and neck cavity. These 12 pairs of nerves are doing kind of the work of the optic nerve, one of the 12 pairs. We've got the glossopharyngeal nerve, we've got the facial nerve, we've got the trigeminal nerve. All of these nerves are doing the work of facial expressions, sight, sound, all of these things from a sensation standpoint and from motor facial expressions. There's people that read facial expressions now, it's cool. But you can see how people are interacting with one another. And those nerves are doing the job of maintaining kind of the head and neck area. But the vagus nerve is unique. It's the 10th cranial nerve. It comes out from the brainstem. It actually follows down. It has a couple of branches within the head and neck, one to the ear, goes to the pharynx and the larynx to help maintain a good, strong, open, patent airway. But then it continues down, and it's the only nerve that continues down in a unique area in the neck, beside the carotid artery and the jugular vein on both sides. You tend to say the vagus nerve. In reality, there's two. We have a right and a left, but they do eventually come together and mesh together further down. And this is what's unique about the vagus nerve is the word vagus means, it came from the root word vague, which kind of, from an anatomical standpoint, meant it was wandering. It didn't have a single target. It meant it was going everywhere. So it comes down through the neck, and then it has branches that literally go to the heart, to the lungs, to essentially every tissue within the thorax, continues down through the diaphragm, doesn't innervate the diaphragm directly, but the diaphragm is very important to vagus nerve function, continues down into the abdomen, and has a direct physical connection to virtually every single organ in the abdomen. So a direct link to the stomach, to the pancreas, to the liver and gallbladder, to the small intestine, the entire small intestine, which is very long, most of the large intestine, to the kidneys, and an indirect connection to the spleen. Every single organ has a direct connection via the vagus nerve, except for the spleen. That is unique because no other nerve in the body does that. And so from an anatomical macro perspective, this was just really unique. And so they were like, what do we name this? It's the vagus nerve. It's so vague for us. We don't truly know. It came down to microscopic anatomy that really helped to change this. Because when we look at histologically, and that's looking at the actual cells present in each of these organs, we see that there's different types of cells. In the liver, we've got the Kupffer cells and hepatocytes. Hepatocytes are the liver cells. The Kupffer cells are the immune cell present in the liver. They're macrophages in the liver. In the gut lining, we have 70% of our immune cells by volume are present in the lining of the gut. That's a really important fact just for everybody to understand. 70% of our immune cells are located in the lining of the gut. The gut is that really sensitive area that all the good stuff can come in, but the bad things can also make their way in through there. And so we have all of these immune cells that are present there. How do we interact with them? How does the brain know what's going on in the gut? And how does the brain then signal to those cells that we need to shut things down or start things up? The vagus nerve is involved in that. We, from a histological standpoint, see alveolar macrophages in the lungs, and we see microglial cells in the brain, and we see these same types of tissue resident macrophages present in every single organ of the body. And we're realizing that these cells, these tissue resident macrophages, are actually the first cell to develop during our development. When we are in utero, the first cell differentiation that occurs from these pluripotential stem cells, that we're the sac of stem cells, and then we start to align into these somites in different areas, the first cell to actually develop in each of those areas is the tissue resident macrophage, and that is there to help grow each organ effectively, and it's there for our entire life to help maintain the function of those organs throughout our life. So Kate, I see you being like, yes, this is right, totally. Those immune cells are present in every organ, and it's the vagus nerve that is the connecting point between the brain, which is the coordinator of all of this, and those immune cells. We're now realizing that the vagus nerve is the neuroimmune link. It's the link to help regulate the immune system. The immune system does way more than just protect us from threats to our survival. It's necessary for optimal function of every single organ within the body. That is, without a doubt, how the vagus nerve kind of functions, and it's the uniqueness of the vagus nerve is that it does this and no other nerve does this. That is
Mhm.
why it's so special.
I
Kate,
think
did you ever?
a big misunderstanding that people often have of the vagus nerve is that it has sensory aspects only. I think that sometimes the motor aspects of the vagus nerve are overlooked
Yes.
because maybe hashtag nervous system regulation is
Yes.
trending always because everyone's on the edge of their seat about to go into full-on crisis these days. And so everyone's looking for regulation. And so the nervous system and the vagus nerve and toning that parasympathetic nervous system to pump the brakes has been a really hot topic. And I think a lot of people know that surface level of the
Yeah.
function of the vagus nerve, but as it comes into the motor aspects of it as well as just another element of why it is so unique, right? And these immune system effects, it's such a profound aspect of our nervous system and our body's complete functioning capacity that I wish people knew all of these details just to create a more well-rounded understanding of really how important it is.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think we've named it and we've done it unintentionally in this way. We've called the axis the gut-brain axis, meaning that it goes gut to brain only. Absolutely incorrect, right? It's the microbiome, gut, brain everywhere axis. And people miss that. People forget that. So you're absolutely right. For context, 80% of the signals on the vagus nerve are sensory, right? 80% of the signals are coming up from all of those organs. Every single one that it connected to, it's sending status updates to the brain as to what's happening in those organs. That is a sensory function. It's an efferent or afferent function, excuse me. It's going from the organs up to the brain, so the brain gets good information. When you don't get good information, you can't send out good resulting recommendations or thoughts, right? So I like to think of the brain almost as a CEO of the body. And without good information making its way up regarding what's happening in the microbiome, regarding what's happening with the immune cell function, regarding what's happening with breath rate and heart rate and blood pressure and all of these internal functionalities, blood sugar, all of these things that need to make their way up. If we don't get that good information to the brain can't do good computing to then send out the efferent signals that are actually creating the positive effect that we're looking for. So we have a 4-lane highway upwards from the body to the brain and a 1-lane highway from the brain down. Okay. 80% of the signals go up, only 20% of the signals go down. Now,
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
a
Keep
few of them
going.
go to those muscles in the throat area to help maintain a patent airway. And this will come up again when we talk about breath, because the breath really is a huge piece to this puzzle. But the vast majority of that efferent pathway, the brain to body signaling, is actually that motor component, Kate, that you're talking about, which is the actual thing that we know as the parasympathetic control, the actual brake mechanism. And that is specifically acetylcholine that's being released. So the vagus nerve utilizes only one neurotransmitter. It is acetylcholine, and acetylcholine goes down to regulate the function of those immune cells, telling them it's time to calm down. And so we've talked about this immune system regulation piece, but we haven't talked about how do we produce acetylcholine? How do we ensure that the signals that are going up to the brain are effective? How do we ensure that the signals that are going down from the brain are effective? What about the signals within the brain itself? Right? Are we getting that good information up, but then sending that good information throughout the entirety of the central nervous system? The answer ideally is yes, but for most people, if they're dealing with chronic health conditions, chronic mental health issues, chronic inflammatory issues, the answer is usually no. And so the vagus nerve is involved in virtually every chronic health condition, period, because of this.
So back where you said 70% of your immune system or the immune cells were in the gut lining, and you're talking about information coming up to the brain from down in that area. Things like intestinal permeability,
Yeah.
leaky gut for the common term. And leaky gut was really one of the big buzzwords a few years ago. And you really rarely hear about it anymore. Everything else is taken off now. And you don't hear as much about this leaky gut. But with things like pesticides and all the other toxins we come in contact with, and people's detox systems not really being stellar, there's only so many toxins we're able to deal with, and if we have issues that make it harder. But can you talk a little bit about that intestinal permeability or that kind of leaky gut, how that would contribute to lack of information getting up to the brain?
Yeah, no question about it. I think you're absolutely right. We've forgotten about leaky gut. It's lost its notoriety as a term, but it still is the pathway by which the vast majority of toxic burden enters the body. Not all, but the vast majority enters because the gut lining is very thin. The gut lining is literally one cell thick throughout the entirety of the small intestine in particular. Large intestine is a little thicker, but that's as a protective mechanism as we're trying to get rid of waste further down the tract. But that said, the lining of the intestines are very, very thin. And the reason for that is we need to be able to pull nutrients into the body. But when we are bombarded with all of the toxins, right? Anything from glyphosate to name your pesticide to plastics that you're chopping up on your cutting board to all of you name it. We are bombarded with toxic burden. And it comes in and it's going to feed the microbiome in a particular way. And those toxins themselves are also very strong and very capable of breaking down the proteins that hold these single cells together, that single cell wall barrier together. These proteins are called zonulin and occludin, and they're very easily broken down by things like glyphosate. For some people, gluten. For some people, casein protein can do it. For other people, nightshade vegetables contain proteins that will do it. And for other people, they have very strong genetic capabilities to handle this. But for most people, we don't, especially based on the quantity of toxic burden that we're dealing with now. So really what the idea is here is we want to limit the leakiness of the gut. We don't want our gut to become leaky because all of these toxins are going to come in and break down zonulin and occludin. And the one thing you really want to avoid getting into your body, besides all those toxins specifically, is lipopolysaccharide, LPS. Now, lipopolysaccharide is what's found on the outsides of gram-negative bacteria. It's one of these protein synthesis type things, lipopolysaccharide. It's lipopolysaccharide. So lipo is fat, polysaccharide things on it. And this is what has been used for many years in research actually to show leakiness and an inflammatory issue that's going on within the body to simulate that. That said, we're getting low grade LPS into our body all the time when we have a leaky gut because we have 100 trillion bacteria in our large intestine alone. And we have only 40 to 60 trillion human cells in our entire body. So there's constant flux within this microbiome. And if we have high levels of LPS, what that is that's going to trigger a bigger breakdown of those bonds between these cells, the zonulin and occludin, and that's going to allow more toxin to come in. And that is going to trigger the immune cells that are present there. That 70% of immune cells by volume that are located in the lining of the gut are going to become initiated into a fight state. Okay, so these immune cells have on a dimmer switch. It's not a flicking the switch between an M1 and an M2, but they go between a fight state and a fix state. And when there's toxic burden entering, they're immediately going to switch over to fight mode because there's something getting into the body that should not be getting into the body. And that fight mode correlates very well with sympathetic state, sympathetic fight or flight mode overall, which is the other side of the autonomic nervous system. So the vagus nerve runs the parasympathetic rest, digest, recover side. And on the other side, we have the sympathetic fight or flight type of state. And if we're constantly in that sympathetic fight or flight state, it's almost like we've got our foot on the accelerator and the brakes just can't keep up. And that's why the vagus nerve becomes broken down, because if we have constant toxic load that your immune system is constantly getting bombarded with and needing to handle and try to knock down, then you can imagine we're pushing the accelerator all the time. And the brakes, just like brakes in a car, they're going to try. We're going to push the brakes. And for the first few years, for the first decade, maybe 20, 30 years of our lives, we can push the brakes and the brakes slowly wear down, right? Like the brake pads wear down, the brake line becomes worn down. But then you have a kid, and then you have circadian misalignment because you're not sleeping well. And then you have financial burden of that kid. And then you have the financial stressors of living in North America right now. And then you have your parents are getting older. And then you have this and that. And you're dealing with so much stress. During that period of time, you hit a state of overwhelm. And you can always see it's right between age 30 and 45 where the initial issues of health, chronic health conditions, inflammatory health conditions, autoimmunity, you name it, always start to occur because the brakes have worn down. Those brakes wearing down is what we need to avoid. But because we're stuck with just constant accelerator going, it becomes nearly incapable for the vagus nerve to send those signals effectively. So vagal tone decreases. And this is where we start to see wearable devices showing this massive drop off in vagus nerve capacity. And we'll get into that now, I guess. The idea is we need to
Yeah.
limit the toxic burden so that we can not be in that sympathetic state all the time.
Can I ask you one more? I really want to go into that topic, but before we do, I just want to answer one question that I'm
Totally.
thinking, and I think maybe some of the listeners might be wondering too. If you get into that state where maybe you're between 30 and 45, the brakes are worn down, you're starting to have this issue with the vagus nerve, can we rebuild the
Yeah.
brake? Can you change them out like you can with your car? And or is it sort of like once it wears down, that's your vagus nerve for the rest of your life?
If we could truly replace it, I think that would be amazing. We can't, but we can rebuild it. So, one thing that we are learning more and I think is becoming very positively shared across all holistic health patterns is the idea of neuroplasticity. The vagus nerve is a nerve. And just like every other nerve, you can build capacity within that nerve. It's the exact reason why we see 90-year-olds running marathons and other 90-year-olds not. And the difference is at their 20, 30, 40 age gap, they had a split of was I working to build my vagus nerve and build my resilient capacity or was I not? And that's really why we get to an age 90 person who's incredibly physically fit and capable versus one who's not, because that trajectory split occurred. And what they did was the people that are capable and physically fit and mentally capable at those ages started working on their vagus nerve resilience and capacity when they started to note that there was an issue starting. So yes, you absolutely can rebuild. It may not ever go back to where you were when you were born, but your capacity can be rebuilt. And it's all about building that resilience.
My question would be, because I get a lot of older people too. I'm sorry, did I cut you off, Kate?
No, I was just like, oh, good. I feel so relieved that this can be rebuilt because I think so many of us are like, ah, shit, this sounds like now what?
Yeah, you're young, right? Now look at me. I've got 20 years on you. And I get a lot of people in their 60s. So I have clients in their 70s. I have one that's 82 and a lot in their 50s that they didn't pump the brakes.
Yeah.
They were like, F the brakes. I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do. And I'm gonna stay in this victim mode and stay in this uber stressed mode with all my issues and just keep going to the doctor and get the medications. Now they wake up, whether it's through menopause, midlife crisis, whatever you want to call it, just I want to take control of my health. I tell them it's never too late when you bring in the right lifestyle tools according to how you're created, not a bunch of generic shit out there, right? Everybody do this because we're all so very, very different in how we respond. Like you said, even genetically, some of us have a really great ability with detox systems. Others of us, not so good. But yet I know for me personally, I've built that up very consciously. So is it too late to rebuild it to a point where you can still have this amazing quality of life and have the vagus nerve functioning positively for you?
I
Or
don't
is it like,
think it
hmm,
is. I think for me, it comes down to how willing are you to perform and to follow through with the recommendations and
100%.
the individualized tools that will determine your actual capacity. It comes down to how willing and how capable and how the word is escaping me, but essentially, if if you are willing to do the work, you'll be able to build it back. But you need to be willing to do the work.
There's no magic. There is, and we talk about this all the time. I preach it. There is no magic pill. There's
No.
no, whether it's a GLP-1 or anything else, there's no magic. Get me going. There's no magic pill for any of it. You have to understand you.
Yeah.
What are the things that your body, your mind, your soul needs?
Yes.
And do the freaking work. This is
Do the
what,
work.
and she and I talk about this all the time too. Take that first step. It's never
Yeah.
too late to take that first step to start making these changes, because they will be profound
Yeah.
regardless if you're willing to do it. And that's what I wanted to check with you. Because I don't want my older people going, well, crap, I didn't do anything in my 30s and 40s, and
Yeah.
now I'm sunk. So
Well,
there
if you're knocking yourself down for 50, 60 years, building yourself back up is going to take some real effort, right? If you catch yourself early and you're able to limit how much damage is done, it's not going to take quite as much. There are windows, but it's certainly not incapable. Nobody is incapable of returning to a positive, good quality of life where health span is the goal and allowing your body to function at its positive best, as close to optimal as long as possible, if you're willing to do the work.
And change your life. Like
Yeah.
it might not just be, there could be a point where the small things aren't enough. You actually have to get out of that career that's been making you burn the candle on both ends, or get out of that toxic relationship, or really start to stop eating certain foods that are aggravating. Like it might require that you show up at a really strong high level for your health. That does change your life, because if you want to change your health, you have to change your life. If
Yes.
nothing changes, then nothing changes. So if you catch this early and you're one of the lucky people that's, oh, I'll just slow it down more or add another hour of sleep, great. But if you have come to a really chronic place with your health, be it physical or mental, it might require severe change. And that's okay. That's a good thing, because then you turn over a new leaf and you get to live a new life, really,
Yeah.
that has a different level of vitality, but it comes back to free will and
Yeah.
motivation.
I think for me, just the idea of going from a 1.0 version of you to a 2.0 version of you is really what you're trying to create, right? We've all met that friend who completely turned their life around. And you're like, I don't remember you like this. I don't remember this person getting to bed at a reasonable time and being so conscious about what they eat and making the choices and the decisions that they're making when I knew them 15, 20 years ago. And we see that person and we're inspired by that person. And then what that should do for all of us is note that it's possible, that we are truly capable of changing who we are and creating a version 2 or version 3 of ourselves and essentially becoming the best version of ourselves that we want to.
I love that. And I also think for the younger people listening, start taking control now. Gain
100%.
that awareness so that you're gradually pumping brakes early on so that the car doesn't careen out of control
Yeah.
at that early age. We're seeing so much chronic illness now and disease and like crazy stress with young people. And I have talked about it on here. I used to do the interpretations for True Diagnostics, the
Oh,
epigenetic age
nice.
testing.
Yes.
And the young people, Dr. Navaz, it would blow your mind with the rapid rate in which they're aging compared to some of us that are older and didn't have all these exposures that they've had since they were infants compared to what we had. And it's truly mind-blowing to me. So why not I think it's important to get the word out there. Start as soon as you can. It's never too early to start gaining this awareness around your body and your mind and putting this together, to start pumping a little early. Just because you're young and you can withstand that. I remember going out dancing till 4 a.m. I was a fitness trainer. We'd go dancing till 4 a.m. and they go, oh, it's 7 o'clock, time to go to work. I'll never stop doing this. Ugh. And just because we can doesn't mean we should, because the body will pay the price for it at some point. So will the mind. You'll start to lose it.
No question. No question about it.
Kate, did you have anything else till we maybe move
No,
on?
I think we should go back to what I originally derailed you from, Dr. Navaz, I think you were going toward the HRV conversation.
Yes.
Yeah, let's go there.
Yeah, I think this is a great way to understand. And I think you're, Susan, at the exact right moment here where you're talking about wearable devices and being religious with knowing what's going on your Garmin or your Aura or your Whoop or your Apple Watch, whatever device you choose. I have no preference. I don't care. None of them are diagnostic, by the way. They're all very good at looking at trend data. And I think there's nothing more empowering than seeing data and being able to say, oh, crap, I need to change something, or, oh, I'm on the right track. Let me keep this going. And when you see the data and it's just there and it's like objectively telling you that you're doing something wrong or you're doing something right, then you can't subjectively fight your way through it and not blame yourself for sticking with those bad habits in the first place. Objective data helps people change. And I think we are living at a time where we all have, for the most part, access to wonderful health data at relatively low cost. Like you can get a reasonable Garmin watch for a couple $100, right? Like we're not talking thousands and thousands of dollars needing to be invested into this tool. I've had my Aura Ring for 6.5 years. I just had my anniversary on the app. Like I have 6.5 years of data on my sleep, my stress levels, my activity levels, my HRV markers. That's wonderful, right? Being able to say that I have that and know what was happening at certain times in my life and say, oh, this was correlated to that type of issue. And that's why I really like Heads Up as a platform for practitioners to say, hey, I can see the correlation happening here. There's something clearly amiss here, or yo, your HRV is down 20% this month. What's going on? So having that data empowers individuals and it helps empower the practitioners to say, I can help keep track of your issues throughout the entire day for the last month. And every month when we connect, I'm looking over it and I'm saying, hey, here's what's going on. Let's talk about what caused these issues to occur. HRV. I think let's just get into this one biomarker because it's so unique to the autonomic nervous system. It's just telling us whether we're pushing the accelerator or the brakes too much or not enough. And I think that is, in its most simple form, that's what HRV is. Are we foot on the gas or are we foot on the brakes? Or are we capable of going between the two? Okay. So heart rate variability is different from heart rate. Heart rate is simply beats per minute. How many are spikes on an ECG over a period of 60 seconds are you having? And so that measures your heart rate. We want to have a good heart rate somewhere in the 45 to 65 area as a resting heart rate, slightly higher when we're awake and active, and then workout heart rates are much higher than that, obviously. But if your resting heart rate is 85, something's not right.
Probably.
We know that our body is essentially working too hard. Our foot's on the accelerator and we're doing something more. So heart rate is a good marker, but it's a very basic marker. It doesn't tell us, because two people can have the same heart rate and very different heart rate variabilities. So now heart rate variability is measuring the number of milliseconds between those RR intervals, between beats of the heart, averaged over a period of time. So it requires a time span longer than a minute. Usually it's in the 3-minute range to get a good accurate HRV track. And that HRV marker is going to tell us, are we going more accelerator or brakes acutely within those 3 minutes, and what's happening with our body's recovery. So a low HRV tells us that the beats of our heart are almost like a metronome. They're happening rhythmically. And what a rhythmic heartbeat signals is that we lack resilience or adaptive capacity. We lack the ability to adapt to the situations around us, and our heart must be beating as a metronome in order to function. I wouldn't even say in that situation, in order to just function, because our heart should not simply beat as a metronome. We should have variance. What that variance comes down to is when we push the accelerator, our heart rate should speed up and our heartbeats should get closer together. So the interbeat interval, the number of milliseconds between beats of the heart when we're pushing the accelerator, when we're in sympathetic fight or flight mode, is going to be lower. And then when we push the brakes, the heartbeats should get further apart. And so the number of milliseconds between them lengthens. And we should have a variance that comes up. So for those that are just listening on audio, shorter interbeat intervals means the heartbeats are close together. So there's, let's say, 300 milliseconds between. And then for a longer interbeat interval, we should have 400 milliseconds between. And so what that's doing is it's telling us that the variation is between 300 to 400 milliseconds. That means that our variability, our heart rate variability is 100 milliseconds. Yes,
Question for you from
go
a
for it.
I wear a analog watch and I don't have a wearable, and so I'm a little bit new. I'm holding the torch for
No worries.
people like me. It's surprising to people who aren't in the HRV world that we don't want our heartbeat to be just a regular
I
metronome,
know.
because I think that's what we were taught. And I think we were taught about arrhythmia as being like an irregular heartbeat that's an issue, something's wrong with your heart. So can you speak to the difference between an arrhythmia in the heart that would be something that would be a cardiac issue you would need to see your doctor for
Of
versus
course.
HRV that actually is so healthy for you?
Yeah, there's a variation that is positive and where we want to be in a healthy mode, and then there's the electrical activity that's aberrant, and it's completely random. It's not linked to autonomic function usually. It's usually involved with some sort of inflammatory issue that's triggering the AV and SA nodes to go off. And what we're going to see in a situation like that is complete aberrance, where the variability goes through the roof. Okay. And by through the roof, I mean like 250 to 500 milliseconds of complete change that's occurring. Okay. We don't want to see that. We want to see within a positive range. So a metronome to me is too much sympathetic, and complete aberrant is too much sympathetic. And then we've got the happy medium, which is where we want to be in that. And I hate saying a number because people are going to say, I'm nowhere near that. Most people aren't, just so you know. And there isn't a good number for HRV. If we can have a goal of getting up to around 100, that's wonderful. But if you're starting at 20, 100 is not a reasonable goal. So think of where you start, and the best HRV is better than yesterday and not so high that you're in one of those AFib or SVT type of situations. So there's a positive zone between a hypersympathetic breakdown vagus nerve not working state and a hyper excitable electronic heartbeat variability that isn't working well issue. And that's where you want to be. You want to be in a situation where the stress can come in and your body can handle it. And that's what the HRV is telling you is happening, that the adaptability is actually really, really capable, that your body is capable of adapting to new stressors or new challenges effectively. And then you're not going to have negative issues pop up.
So that's the resiliency piece, that
Yes.
your body is actually able to swing with the curveballs of life
Yes.
rather than having this high sympathetic response to just like panic. Life's not safe. The world's not okay. I'm not okay.
Totally. That's exactly right. We need to build resilience, and that's what we're doing with these habitual processes, habitual daily lifestyle factors that change our epigenetics for the positive, but what we're doing is we're building resilience. So exercise is not a parasympathetic state, right? When you're on the treadmill or you're biking or you're lifting weights, you're pushing your body into a sympathetic state, but you're teaching your body that you're safe in that sympathetic state. And you're building the process is known as hormesis or hormetic stressors. And the idea is that you're building capability of going into a stress state and being able to come back out of it, being able to bounce back to resilient vagus nerve activated parasympathetic state. And that's where the positive stress comes in. That's where the creative work that we do and our productive work actually comes in. We're not feeling overwhelmed. There's a huge difference between stress and overwhelm. Stress is good, overwhelm is bad. And we want to build our stress capacity, our ability to handle as much stress as possible before we enter that state of overwhelm. That's ultimately what HRV is trying to measure. So the higher your HRV, the bigger your resilient capacity is and your adaptive capacity, so you can bounce back into parasympathetic mode effectively when need be.
Got it. I have a question there, but I also want to say that again, with stress, people think all stress is bad. I need to get rid of all my stress. Again, you never will. We want to optimize it because it
Yes.
keeps us motivated and driven. And we have that threshold. The problem is most people are operating over that threshold where we start to see all these negative issues. But we want to ideally actually be just right under here
Just below.
where it does keep
Exactly.
us motivated. And you have some people like COMTGG,
Yeah.
if you're familiar with that. So they have a very rapid processing of the catecholamines, these stress neurotransmitters. I'm an AA. Can you tell?
Oh my gosh.
Right? We're overactive. And we have Kate right in the middle with an AG. But that GG, so in a non-stressful, your cognitive function not as good with too low stress. So we
Yes.
need to amp you up a little bit, right? Where
Yeah.
mine, I react so strongly to
Yeah.
acute stress. Like my heart, I feel it. The heart rate goes up. It's amazing how the genetics play a part
Totally.
of this. My question for you, and I don't know if I even made that point there. Oh yeah. So I want to make sure people understand that not all stress is bad. The exercise isn't bad, but if you're doing chronic exercise, right, where it doesn't, you're not getting that break. And even we know that over 2 hours a day of exercise, higher intensity increases IL-6, which is a
Yeah.
inflammation gene.
Yeah.
So too much is too much. You have to take
Exactly.
these breaks.
Not to mention where your starting point is. If you're right on the borderline of overwhelm, and then you go and you run a marathon, or then you go and you push
Oh,
yourself to do 2 hours of exercise, you're pushing yourself into a state of overwhelm, and exercise is actually having a negative effect
the
on your health.
detrimental.
So you really need to figure out where you stand. And this is why individualized care is so important. I think
Absolutely.
that cannot be overstated. Individualized care is there's no generic answer to this is what everybody has to do. We all need to figure out where we currently stand. Just simplify it. Whenever you have a new address that you're trying to drive to, you put in the address on the GPS, right? On Google Maps, whatever it is. Google Maps doesn't just need to know where you want to go. It needs to know where you're starting first. Because the answer to where you want to go from not knowing where you begin is infinite, meaning that it's generic. Anybody can get there, but you don't know how to get there for you unless you know where you currently start, where your starting point is. So that is why I created a bit of an acronym here that I think people are going to love, which is VAGUS, VAGUS. The V stands for validate. Figure out where you currently are. Functional lab testing, epigenetic testing, wearable health data, regular blood work. Get to know what's happening within your body. Validate the data, get the objective proof, and know where you stand. In addition to this, do the mindfulness work. When you wake up, take inventory of yourself and say, you know what? Today's a day where I need to rest. I'm not going to push myself. I'm going to rest. That's what morning HRV actually is and how it's been implemented for the last 20 years in Russian gyms everywhere, right? Russian gymnasts and Russian athletes is actually where HRV was first found and utilized effectively. Was if your HRV is low, today is a low training day. And if your HRV is high, it's a high training day because your adaptive capacity on that day is better. So we need validation as to where we currently stand. Then we have A. A is activate. And I'm talking about activating vagus nerve. And one of the big pieces to this is your breathing, your breath. We've alluded to this a little bit, but your
Yeah.
breath truly is the way to change your body and the state, whether you're in that sympathetic accelerator fight or flight state or in the parasympathetic rest, digest, recover state. Your breath should be three things: nasal, diaphragmatic, and longer exhales. When we inhale, we're pushing the accelerator. But as we exhale, we're pushing the brakes. It's the reason why when we have a stressor go away from us, we go, and we exhale and we go into a sigh of relief. So activating the vagus nerve comes down to your breath and then doing exercises that support that breath to become a capable breath. Humming, chanting, gargling, singing, all the things I talk about in my book. Cold plunge if you're up for it, sauna therapy if you're up for it, creative pursuits if you're up for it. Push your body into those activated vagus nerve states, but first take inventory of where you're at. Never forget the V. The validate is key. Activate is the next. Then we've got G, VAG. G is gut brain optimization. This is diet. This is what's coming into your body, what's living in your body, the microbiome, understanding that what we feed it is going to make all the difference in the world on the gut side, and that information makes its way up to the brain. And if we have inflammation beginning in the gut, the inflammation will eventually make its way to the brain and result in brain deterioration, neurodegeneration, etc. So the G state, that's a big one that needs to be addressed. The gut brain optimization, because we need good nutrition, we need good information coming in. Okay. Then we've got the U, and the U is unburden. And this is the difference between feeling stressed and feeling positive about the stress that is coming in. Changing your perspective, changing your mindset, getting rid of the root causes of all of the stressors that are causing you to enter that sympathetic state so heavily, and being able to shift your body into that unburdened state where you're not feeling overwhelmed all the time. Being able to move your body into that vagus nerve activated state at will. And I think that's huge for a lot of people just from a mindset perspective. And then the last is S, and S stands for sustain. Making these changes long term. Nothing can be short term. It has to be a long term practice. And this comes down to, what are my daily habits? What are the things that I'm doing with regards to my sleep, with regards to my day-to-day habits? Am I getting up between my calls to walk around and not sit on my ass for 8 hours a day? What am I doing to make sure that these changes that I'm trying to implement through the VAGU system are going to be sustained long term? And making these habits, making them positive habits for your long term. You guys are the first people to hear this acronym, by the way. It's just been completed. I'm just putting it all together and creating presentations on it. But the Vegas protocol, the VAGUS protocol, is what I'm creating and allowing it to be bio-individualized for each individual, having these as the markers that help you enable your vagus nerve to do the job of creating that resilience to handle stress long term.
That is so great. That acronym, I think it covers so many bases in such a concise way. Maybe for the listeners, can you just say it one more time what each of them are?
Of course. V stands for validate. A stands for activate, specifically activating vagus nerve. G is gut brain optimization, mostly on nutrition side of things, but really on optimizing digestion, optimizing gut function and brain function. U is for unburden, getting rid of overwhelm and allowing yourself to experience positive stress. And S for sustain long-term changes.
Love it. Thank you.
You too. I do too. And I had one question around like the HRV, for instance, just an example that I experienced last year. And in talking about like the high end, because I have you have your average, it sets after seeing how you are, set your baseline.
Totally.
And at that time, I was about like in the 40s and 50s, pretty stressed, but that's about where I sat. And I live in altitude and I'm very taxed by altitude. So I go to Mexico.
Yes.
And I sleep like a boss for the first time because I'm out of altitude. My body's, I don't have to fight for oxygen. I'm sleeping like a boss. My sleep score was 100. And my HRV went up to 78. And it's, caution. But isn't that my body was it my body was taxed because I went down there, or my body was like, thank you, God.
Yeah. I think that's exactly what it was. And the device
That's
was
the way I
like,
took
what
it
is happening here?
in a good
Right?
way.
I think it was in a very positive way. And yes, you're absolutely right. Altitude is a stressor. It's a challenge because you have a lower capacity of oxygen. So there's or a lower pressure. And so what that lower pressure of oxygen is going to create is lack of oxygen getting into the cells. So you're almost under a sense of stress just to begin with. But it's actually a tool that, and I'm sure you're aware of this, altitude training is a tool that's utilized by athletes to go to altitude, train at those high altitudes, low pressure, low oxygen capacity, and then they go to those places and they perform
Oh,
madmen,
oh
right?
yeah.
And having just phenomenal performances because now the oxygen level is easy and my body can handle low levels of oxygen much more effectively. So you're absolutely right. I think what happened there is just the device was like, what? Going from 40 something to 70 something, your device said something is wrong here, beware. But it was more, we don't know what's happening, so we're just telling you something is up.
That was what I was gauging from that, because I feel great when I go to sea level. I perform really well here,
Yes.
but I go to sea level and I say I'm a beast here, but I'm a monster at sea level. And it feels almost effortless compared to what you put out here. And you can see the difference. And that's why I love these tools.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to work on my little partner over there to get her to not fear these things, but use them. And I think people have that fear of, I don't want to be tied to that. But it's
Hmm.
not being tied to it. And I love how you put it, as far as it's a piece. It's I wrote down the word as you were talking right in the beginning, accountability.
Yeah.
Just to, am I doing the right things? It doesn't mean that if my HRV dropped 2 points last night, that I can't go hike 10 miles. I probably shouldn't. Maybe I'll do a 5 mile instead. I learned how to tailor a little bit more
Yeah.
so that I can get better recovery and be able to do that 10 miler with 2,000 feet of elevation gain and not be as taxed for 2 days after.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, a great way to use it as accountability. Am I doing the right things? Maybe I shouldn't have eaten that yesterday. Eating the way I did yesterday, it really affected my recovery. And that's how I like to use it with my clients, but to also bring accountability to them. Okay, your watch told you had 4 hours that you needed to recover again. Your heart rate variability is in the 20s. You're constantly stressed, and you wait that 4 hours and then you go bust it again. Take the day off. It's
Yeah.
okay to take a rest day. That's where we do recover. And
Yes.
sometimes I've found, even I've had to do 2 days in a row where I've done, maybe just go for a chill walk for 2 days. My HRV goes up, my sleep gets better. We just need to, it's just to really say, let's pay attention. The other thing I love is how you're talking about the individuality when it comes to care.
Yeah.
I say personalized health, and I've been putting it out there that personalized health, they say, is the future, but it's not, because I have it, you have it. There's those of us that have it, and it is your future. If
Yeah.
you look at it, for everybody we're talking to, personalized care is the key. That, like you said, the generic stuff is keeping people, a lot of people, you have a 60% non-responder rate to different things. And
Totally.
it keeps them in a stress mode because they get more frustrated that this isn't working for them. Maybe it was the timing of it. Maybe it was the cold plunge. Don't get me near this. Not ideal for all of us, or at specific
Totally. Totally.
times. And so I just want to commend you on that. And I love the VAGUS, like Kate
Yeah.
said. I think it's fantastic. So what kind of tips, tell us what your favorite tools are in working with this, and what kind of tips you could give people that are looking for, just like, how can I get started to really, what were the things that you would say, just a couple little things they could do, whether it's
Yeah.
breath or whatever.
First, figure out what your breathing pattern is, right? With every one of my patients, I get them started with just assessing their breath in a very simple way. So put one hand on your chest, put one hand on your belly, and let's take 3 breaths and just assess. Do I have more motion in my chest, or do I have more motion in my belly? And if I have more motion in my belly, that means I'm diaphragmatically breathing. And if I have more pressure in my and more motion in my chest, then that means I'm using my chest muscles to breathe. And chest breathing is more sympathetic driving, and belly breathing is more parasympathetic driving. So if I feel like it's my chest, don't beat yourself up about it. Number one, all of these things are changeable and adaptable, and we need to teach our bodies to do that. So just slowly close your eyes and focus on expanding your diaphragm and your belly with your breath and slow it down and go into these patterns. I really love a 4-7-8 breath pattern, or even just as a very simple starting point, 3 and 5, 3 seconds in, 5 seconds out. Box breathing pattern is a great simple one that people can implement. 4-7-8 is a slight level up, but I've never had people shift as quickly as when we do a 4-7-8. So that's 4 seconds of inhale through the nose, 7 second hold, 8 second exhale, mouth or nose doesn't really matter, but it's a slow, controlled exhale. And all of that should ideally be diaphragmatic. So you should only feel the belly truly moving with those breaths. It's the most simple thing. People overlook the breath like there's no tomorrow. This is I think the single most overlooked and easiest thing to implement is to change your breath. Just when you catch yourself in a stressed mode, your kids come home and they throw crap all over the house, and your spouse is not doing things the way that you want them done. I'm not talking about my own house. And you just catch yourself and you say, exhale, and do that breathing pattern and let it go. And you realize that it's not as big a deal as you're making it in your head. And the emotions don't need to tie it to something that's so overwhelming and annoying. And it'll all be okay. You can clean up the mess and it's not going to take over your life. And don't let it become a sense of overwhelm. And just utilize the breath in those acute situations. And then over time, train your breath to do that acutely so that you don't enter that state where you need to consciously pull yourself back all the time. And it's a training tool, it's a pattern, it's a consistency thing. If you do this consistently, you're going to change. You're going to change how your brain functions. You're going to change how you adapt to different situations, how your emotions are regulated. There's so many positives that come from breathing effectively. I think that can't be overstated and should not be overlooked by anybody. So breath is key, no question.
And I know you, as I, are a big proponent of mouth taping.
Yes, I love
Oh, I
it.
can't sleep without it.
Yeah, mouth tape is a major game changer. Not across the board. Nothing is generic, not across the board for everybody, but in the vast majority of people, and we can assess this. If you wake up with a dry mouth, if you wake up feeling like you haven't had good restful sleep, if you need an alarm and you need to hit it 6 times to snooze it and allow yourself to rest, you're probably breathing with your mouth and you're not getting as good restful sleep as you should. Mouth tape was a game changer for me. Absolutely. So it's just a very small, and I've got facial hair for the people that can't see me. I've had this beard for 25 years. So I'll use a very small piece of tape, almost the size of, and this is a weird way to say it, but everybody knows it, like a Hitler mustache type size, and just put it over the lips. Very gentle, leave the sides open, give yourself a little bit of peace of mind for those who are stressed about this. There are even all of these like hostage tape and all of these different types
Hush
of
strips
branded.
here.
Yeah, exactly. There are branded tools that you can use, but anything simple will do this. And if you can just keep your mouth closed through the night and breathe through your nose, I naturally wake up now between 5:15 and 6 on my own naturally, and then I'm able to go and do my day. And I barely use an alarm. I don't think I've used an alarm other than when I needed it for a reminder to do something. But I haven't used an alarm to wake up in the morning unless I've traveled a ridiculous amount of hours to a new time zone and things are all messy.
I had a friend use it last week and they said, oh my God, this thing was a game change.
Yeah,
Because I
huge.
would catch them, you're breathing out of your mouth. You're breathing out of your mouth. Like,
Totally.
and you see it. I'll hear people coming up on me on a hiking trail, or I'll come up on them and they're, and I just want to
Yeah.
go, stop your mouth breathing. If you actually bring it down and do a longer exhale. And I find that that actually helps athletic performance too. If you're,
Huge,
especially if you're
huge.
doing something incline, I'll catch myself, stop, because I don't chest breathe anymore. That's the stress breathing, like you said. I'm all belly. I've been for years, but we tend to forget that when we're in a really like athletically stressful, high intensity thing.
Yeah.
If you can be conscious of that and bring it into the belly and have those longer exhales, your performance starts to increase. You're not taxing yourself
Yeah.
as much as you are. So in sleep, in athletic
Yeah.
performance, in day
Totally.
to day, it all that breath work. I love that. It
For
all makes sense.
anyone who wants to dig into this topic a little bit more, I highly recommend Patrick McKeon's book, The Oxygen Advantage.
Yeah,
Phenomenal book. Just clearly states everything and like absolute game changer when it comes to athletic capacity, for sure.
I've got it up here somewhere. It's in one of my Bibles.
I do
And
audio for all of these.
it's
I
funny.
also like the book Breath by James
Yeah,
Mist.
Jay
I
Breath
think
is
that
a
one,
phenomenal book as well. Yeah,
yeah, I think that one was even on the bestseller list or
it
something. A lot of
was. It was
people
a New
know
York
about it.
Times right when it came out. It was a great book.
And what was really cool about there was something in his book where he was talking about mouth taping and he did an experiment where he did the reverse and he
Yeah,
forced
plug the
mouth breathing.
nasal passages. I remember that.
And
Yeah,
I
I
forget how many days he did that for. He did it just a short number of
think it
days.
was a week. Yeah,
Yeah, and he charted that his entire health took such a nosedive. It was completely
yeah,
it was really alarming. And so I think that's a good book for people who are curious
yeah.
as well.
Great starter book for sure on
Yeah.
breathing patterns and understanding how the breath works. Patrick McKeon is a little bit more next level on the Buteyko breathing and that stuff, but highly recommend either of those, depending on where you're at.
And watch your children. Watch your children,
Yes,
people, because mouth breathing is so detrimental. It can change the shape of the face. I can look at someone and even how their teeth are shaped. You can tell if they've been a mouth breather most of their life.
totally.
It's very different shape. They'll have a smaller chin a lot of the time, but it can really create a lot of health issues. So really
Yeah,
watch your children. Talk to a dentist about it. You can actually really work with this so that they don't have these issues. The other thing is when I've spoken with clients about this or just anybody I generally talk to, and they'll say, I can't breathe out. I'm already stuffy. I said, that was me. You will be surprised. I've had the mouth tape on when I've had a head cold and I'm
yes.
stuffy, and I still breathe
Clears you right out.
better when we're
Yeah.
forced to breathe out of the nose. So just try it. If it's daunting to you at night, I woke up the first week, I would find it on my chest, my arm. I've just been pulling it off instinctively. So it took me a bit. And I also recommend to put it on during the day when you're at home doing
Yeah.
nothing. Maybe you're doing paperwork and just get used to that feeling. And then bring it into the evenings. You can do that, but you just put a piece of tape across there, like you said, and just get a little bit used to it.
Yeah. I like the 3M micropore tape. So just making sure that it doesn't, you don't have to deal with like,
Rip
saliva is
your
going to be
skin.
there. So the moisture is going to affect it. And yes, making sure that you don't pull off hair or skin or whatever you have issues going on with. So the 3M micropore, I like the blue version. That's a great starter tape for sure.
Hey, some of the menopausal women might be like, "Oh, get rid of my hair on my upper lip." Wait a minute, is it a positive?
No comment. Shh. No comment from me.
I think this has been such a fantastic conversation. So much gold in this. I know Kate has one last question for you before we thank you for joining us because this has just been such a gift. Thank you. Good. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Kate.
My work is the Radiant Life Project. Susan's work is epigenetics, and both of those things happen in the moment, in your current day, everyday experience, and they take commitment and they take intention. So our question for you, Dr. Navaz, is what are you doing in your present life to cultivate a radiant life through epigenetics?
I have three things because you prompted me earlier with this, so I've been thinking about this as we go. Number one, I am incredibly rigid with my sleep. I make sure that I'm in bed at a reasonable time and I make sure that I generally wake up and I automatically, like I mentioned earlier, naturally wake up around that 5:30, 5:35 slot on my own. And on days when I don't, I allow myself to rest because clearly it's a sense that my body needs to recover. So I'm very rigid with my bedtime. I exercise 3 mornings a week minimum first thing when I wake up. I know that my kids are going to be up and we have house chaos beginning around 7:30. So me time is between 5:30 and 7. I'm at the gym or riding my bike between 3 and 4 times a week. So those are two. And number three, I do a 72-hour fast once a month consistently to help give my gut a break. And I think there are phenomenal effects, not only from giving my gut a break, but supporting insulin sensitivity, supporting mental capacity, shifting my body into a ketogenic state for a short period of time. These are all pieces to the puzzle of, for me, creating that positive shift towards the holistic health span that I want to be able to live long term.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, it's so cool that you're not just teaching this work, but you're practicing it,
Yeah.
really walking your talk. And that for me is the measure of a trustworthy practitioner. And I really appreciate that about you. And I hear that as you're talking about this work, you have this passion for it and you have this passion for teaching it. And you also have a passion for living it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now you see why I had to have him on here. When I heard him, I was like,
Yeah.
just the song of my people. And I knew Kate would resonate with it too. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your time and your space with us today. And everybody share this podcast with everybody you know, because it affects every single one of you out there, the people you love, and maybe someone you don't even know that you might reach through this. So please share this. Thank you so much for listening. Oh, and Dr. Navaz, if anyone wants to contact you or work with you, how did I even forget this? How can they reach you? We will have everything in the show notes as well, but tell everybody how they can reach out to you.
Go to healthupgraded.com to learn more about the clinic and the work that we do. We have a membership that's going to be starting very soon. That will be a great place to connect. And then Instagram at Dr. Navaz Habib. And those are probably the easiest. And then I've got my two books, the most recent of which, I'm dropping things over here, is Upgrade Your Vagus Nerve. A very, very simple guide, kind of breaks down what we talked about today in a little bit more scientific detail, some cases, some more depth to what we talked about today. But those are the best ways to get a sense or get a hold of me and potentially find out more.
And listen to your podcast.
Yes,
so
that's
go ahead
right.
and give that a little props too.
The Health Upgrade podcast. It's a wonderful passion project of mine. We've been doing it now for about 4 years. Myself and my co-host JP Erico. He's actually the inventor of, and I didn't get to talk about it, but the vagus nerve stimulator Truvaga. He's one of the inventors of it, and he's a wonderful guy, great engineering mind. So we come at these topics about health in a very similar way to you guys, actually, in just a slightly different mode. It's cool.
We can always have you back on to talk about the Truvaga.
I would love to, yeah.
And will you have a link to that? Is there a
Yeah,
link to
absolutely. I will
Awesome.
send over all of the details for that. Yeah.
Super. So thank you so much again. And everybody get out there, have an amazing day, and be your most authentic selves. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for tuning into our podcast.
If you enjoyed this week's episode, we'd love for you to share it, leave a review or comment, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Help us get this information out to everyone who could benefit, and we'll keep bringing you the content you crave.
You can also check out our podcast site at everydayepigenetics.co and sign up for our newsletter to stay updated on upcoming episodes. The link is in the show notes.
If you're interested in DNA or epigenetic coaching with Susan, or Radiant Life Coaching for deep inner work with Kate, our contact info is in the show notes below.
Now go and make it a great day and let your most authentic self shine.